Okay, so to continue, by saturating your mind with thoughts of reaching your financial goals, utilizing your affirmation every day, you will obtain your desire and acquire a money consciousness. These principles, as impractical as they may sound, really work. Andrew Carnegie, who began his life as a mere laborer, developed and utilized these steps, him very self, to obtain his $100 million fortune and successfully taught and trained many others to do the same. Even Thomas Edison vouched for this specific process for being successful in creating wealth. Furthermore, these steps require no formal education, sacrifice, or hard labor whatsoever. Just a burning desire to be a winner and a creative imagination is really all one needs. Every great leader can be described as a great dreamer, including the founder of Christianity, the most impressible promised force in the world. This intense dreamer's vision saw reality in his mental and in the spiritual form as well, before the manifestation swept the entire planet. You must choose to see riches in your imagination before it actualizes in your bank account. And we all possess this innate power to do so, no matter race, color, gender, or educational background and upbringing we may have. Anyone can take these actions and attain their dreams. An open mind and persistence is very necessary, though. Catch the spirit of the past pioneers and become a master shapeshifter, remolding the world in any area of your choosing. Do this, and your name can also be remembered for eternity as a master, just as the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, known as the discoverer of the New World, or the great astronomer Nicholas Copernicus, remembered for creating the mass production of the automobile, Thomas Edison for the light bulb, Charles and George Whelan was responsible for the first chain of cigar stores, Abraham Lincoln for freeing black slaves, the Wright brothers for the airplane, Guglielmo Marconi for the radio, just to name a few. This world is habitual in unearthing new findings and inventions by its dreamers and will rightfully reward those who dare to share their ideas. For the universe is filled with ample opportunity for the creative mind. Just remember that all who succeeded in life usually got off to a bad start. John Bunyan, remembered for Pilgrim's Progress, wrote his masterpiece after being imprisoned for his unconventional views on religion. O. Henry discovered his talent while in jail as well and became known as a great author instead of an outcasted criminal. Virtually every great man of the Bible suffered in prison and persecution and are now quoted by ministers and preachers in almost every pulpit in America and any place else the message of Christ has reached on the planet. The greatest inventor and scientist of all time, Edison, failed innumerable times before birthing his jewel, the light bulb. Charles Dickens, disappointed over a love affair, birthed a great author from within himself. Helen Keller, deaf and blind, decided not to accept the reality dealt her and became a well-renowned author, lecturer, political activist, journalist, and educator, graduating from Harvard University. A great fate for a woman with such impediments during her time. Robert Burns, a poor illiterate drunkard, is remembered as a wonderful. Booker T. Washington, a black slave, left his mark on the planet as an American educator, author, orator, and advisor to the presidents of the United States. Born into slavery, he became the leading voice of the former black slaves and their descendants. Ludwig van Beethoven was deaf but created beautiful classical music. John Milton was a blind English poet and journalist. These brilliant and clever men and women will always be remembered for their courage, hope, faith, and tolerance despite their beginnings. If you can possess their states of minds, coupled with these principles, you too will be deemed as a force to be reckoned with for all time, regardless of your previous antiquity. So you see, there is no more effort between one who lives in abundance and prosperity versus one who lives in misery and poverty. One must simply choose high thoughts on a continuous, frequent basis to attain the desired higher life. Perhaps Napoleon Hill's greatest accomplishment was his ability to prove that desire can outfox Mother Nature. Just years after he wrote the words, our only limitations are those we set up in our own mind, his son Blair was born with no ears and diagnosed to be a deaf mute, forcing Hill to reevaluate whether or not he believed his own words. Holding his disfigured infant, the thought crossed his mind, what can I do about this? He then decided to find a way to transplant in his baby son's mind his own burning desire for his child to hear normally. Noticing signs that his young child could slightly hear gave him hope to see his offspring, Get your bula. To see that his offspring might even develop a greater hearing capacity someday. Soon the boy did grow to hear somewhat clearer and had even learned to play the Victrola quite lovely. Hill's next task, teach his baby boy to speak as well. Hill then used Blair's bedtime stories to plant vivid, colorful thoughts that he could really hear just as everyone else. Hill continuously practiced wrapping the philosophy that adversity brings with it a seed of equivalent advantage and was an asset to Blair until the young boy was totally sold on the idea that his handicap was indeed his advantage over others, and having been born with no ears made him extraordinary. Hill convinced Blair that because he had no ears, his teachers would treat him kindly and pay him extra attention, and that he would even be paid a higher wage than his brother once he became old enough to sell newspapers, because people would notice that he was bright and industrious, despite the fact that he had no ears. Gradually, the young boy's hearing improved. He had grown to have no self-conscious tendencies because of his affliction. Hill's methods were working out as tested and proved before. When the boy was only 7 years old, he wanted to sell newspapers, but his mom didn't think it would be safe for a child with his condition. The young boy didn't listen. While his parents were away and his servants weren't watching, Blair snuck out the house to sell newspapers anyway. He borrowed 6 cents from the neighborhood shoemaker to invest in his business, and by the end of the day, he had 42 cents profit after paying off his 6-cent debt to the shoemaker. Hill proudly saw his son as brave, ambitious, and self-reliant. His resourcefulness as a very young businessman would go with him all through life, and later events confirmed this more and more. While the lad's older brother threw tantrums to get what he wanted, Hill's protege, his youngest child, would plan a way to earn money to purchase what he desired. Hill had successfully assisted his handicapped boy and converting his condition into stepping stones, just as he had planned from the day Blair was born. Blair didn't go to special schools either. He completed regular school as a normal child would, nor did his parents allow him to learn sign language. Once he completed college, he had received a hearing aid to test on trial, and for the first time in his life, he had heard practically as well as any person. For the first time, Blair could converse freely with his family, teachers, and friends. Hill and Blair refused to accept the cards dealt to him by nature, and through persistent desire, reversed his condition through the only way Hill had known to create change, with the power of consistent, focused, intensive thought and a burning desire to be successful. Hill and his wife witnessed their child's affliction converted into an asset that would pay dividends in both money and happiness to all who could benefit for all time to come. The young man had decided to devote the remainder of his life to being of service to those born with his conditions, bringing hope and relief to thousands of deaf people. Hill and his son, Blair, had accomplished the impossible by correcting deaf mutism, restoring to normal life those who had suffered from the affliction. Hill and Blair had demonstrated that nothing is impossible to the person who backs desire with enduring faith. The seeds Hill planted in Blair's mind had grown to harvest just what Hill had purposed to achieve, and much, much more. Not only could Blair hear normally, despite x-ray pictures confirming there was no opening in his skull whatsoever from where his ears should have been, but Blair had become the poster boy of hope for others who suffered from deafness and served as the medium by which he rendered useful service to them as well, giving him useful employment at an adequate financial compensation for the remainder of his life. Hill planted in Blair's mind that he could normally speak and hear just as a normal person, and that desire became a reality, converting his handicap into his greatest asset. To close, all achievement, no matter what may be its nature or its purpose, must begin with an intense, burning desire for something definite, even outwitting Mother Nature if persistent over time. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next week. Peace.